In 2011, Qualcomm signed a contract with Apple that locked every iPhone and every iPad to a single chip supplier for 5 years. The fine was €997 million. The company that triggered the investigation no longer exists. I break down Europe's biggest corporate fines every week. Subscribe if you want to understand how billion-euro punishments actually work. Qualcomm already controlled more than 90% of the LTE baseband chipset market. These are the chips that connect your phone to a cellular network. Every call, every message, every scroll runs through a baseband chip, and Qualcomm made nearly all of them. The market had enormous barriers to entry. Years of research and development required before a company could produce a working LTE chip. Billions in patent portfolios creating legal walls around the technology. Intel had been building competitive modem chips for years. Their XMM series worked. The specs matched Qualcomm's. The price was competitive. Apple's own internal documents confirmed they gave serious consideration to switching part of their chipset supply to Intel, but the exclusivity agreement made the math impossible. Qualcomm committed to paying Apple roughly $1 billion per year in incentive payments. The condition was absolute. Apple would use only Qualcomm LTE baseband chipsets in every iPhone and every iPad. If Apple launched a single device with a competitor's chip, the payments stopped immediately, and Apple would owe back a large portion of what Qualcomm had already paid. The clawback provision turned loyalty payments into a financial trap. Jeff Williams, Apple's chief operating officer, later described the arrangement under oath. His words were, quote, "We were staring at an increase of over $1 billion per year in licensing, so we had a gun to our head," end quote. The most profitable company on Earth, held hostage by its own chip supplier. The deal covered every iPhone from the 4S through the 6S, every iPad in that generation. Hundreds of millions of devices per year, all locked to one company. In 2013, Apple extended the agreement through the end of 2016. Only in September 2016, when the contract was expiring and switching costs dropped, did Apple finally source chips from Intel. 5 years and 7 months of total exclusivity. Intel had working chips the entire time. 6,000 miles from Cupertino, a startup in Bristol called Icera was building baseband chips for the 3G market. Founded in 2002, Icera specialized in advanced data rate performance. Their chips were faster than Qualcomm's. They were winning contracts at Huawei and ZTE, two of the largest phone manufacturers in China, because their technology outperformed in the one category that mattered most for mobile broadband devices. Qualcomm held about 60% of the global 3G baseband market, nearly 3 times the share of its closest competitor. Icera had fewer than 500 employees and was growing fast. So Qualcomm's executives in San Diego made a decision. One internal email said, quote, "We should not give Icera any opportunity in Huawei strategically," end quote. Another was 2 words, quote, "Crush Icera at ZTE," end quote. Internal documents described Icera as a critical threat and outlined what Qualcomm called preventive actions. The strategy was surgical. Qualcomm offered Huawei and ZTE prices on 3 specific chipsets below what it cost Qualcomm to manufacture them: the MDM8200, the MDM6200, and the MDM8200A, all sold at a guaranteed loss. The commission applied a price-cost test. 1 chipset was priced below average variable cost, 2 were below long-run average incremental cost. Both standards confirmed the same conclusion. Qualcomm was paying to give these chips away. But the losses only applied to the 2 customers where Icera was gaining ground. Everywhere else, normal pricing. The commission described it with precision. The targeted nature of the price concessions allowed Qualcomm to maximize the negative impact on Icera's business while minimizing the effect on its own overall revenues. They even gave Huawei discounts, specifically so Huawei could undercut the prices of ZTE phones containing Icera chips. Indirect predation. A company making billions chose to lose money on purpose, in the exact 2 places where losing money would destroy a competitor with 500 people. On June 30, 2009, Icera's chief executive Stan Boland walked into the European Commission offices in Brussels and filed a formal antitrust complaint. He presented the pricing data, the contracts, the pattern of targeted below-cost sales. The Commission opened a formal investigation in 2010. But Icera couldn't survive on paperwork. The predatory pricing was draining revenue in real time. In May 2011, Nvidia acquired Icera for $367 million. Jensen Huang wanted their modem technology paired with Nvidia's Tegra mobile processors. It looked like rescue, a well-funded parent company absorbing the losses while Brussels did its work. But Qualcomm's below-cost pricing had already severed Icera's customer pipeline. The contracts at Huawei and ZTE were gone. Without those anchor customers, Icera couldn't prove its chips worked at scale. Without scale, no new buyers would take the risk. The commission later found that Qualcomm intended to prevent Icera, a small and financially constrained startup, from gaining the reputation and scale necessary to challenge Qualcomm's dominance. By 2015, the damage was permanent. Nvidia shut down the Icera division entirely. $367 million for a company already fatally wounded. Nvidia paid full price for a corpse. The Commission's investigation into the Apple exclusivity deal opened separately in July 2015. By December of that year, they sent Qualcomm a statement of objections. Qualcomm's general counsel Don Rosenberg pushed back publicly. He called the Commission's theory unprecedented and inconsistent. He argued Icera left the market for reasons unrelated to Qualcomm. The investigation moved slowly. Failed settlement talks in 2014 and 15 prolonged the process. US political pressure complicated things further. American officials lobbied the EU, claiming the investigation unfairly targeted US technology firms. Qualcomm was simultaneously fighting antitrust battles in the United States, South Korea, China, and Taiwan. Brussels was one front in a global legal war. On January 24, 2018, Commissioner Margrethe Vestager stood at a podium in the Berlaymont building and announced the fine, €997 million. Her statement was direct, quote, Qualcomm paid billions of US dollars to a key customer, Apple, so that it would not buy from rivals. These payments were not just reductions in price, they were made on the condition that Apple would exclusively use Qualcomm's baseband chipsets in all its iPhones and iPads, end quote. 4.9% of Qualcomm's annual turnover, the largest semiconductor antitrust fine in European history. Then in July 2019, a second fine landed, €242 million for the predatory pricing against Icera. Two fines, €1.2 billion combined. Vestager's statement on the second case was equally blunt. Quote, Qualcomm's strategic behavior prevented competition and innovation in this market and limited the choice available to consumers in a sector with a huge demand and potential for innovative technologies, end quote. But the Commission had made a mistake it didn't yet know about. During the exclusivity investigation, officials held 7 meetings with 6 different third parties, companies and individuals who provided information relevant to the case. Standard practice in competition investigations. Except for one critical detail. They never told Qualcomm about these meetings, never disclosed what was discussed, never gave Qualcomm a chance to respond to whatever those third parties said. They didn't keep proper records of what happened in those rooms. Qualcomm's lawyers at Quinn Emanuel discovered this during the appeal. They argued it violated their client's fundamental rights of defense. On June 15, 2022, the General Court agreed. Case T235/18. The judgment annulled the entire €997 million fine. Not because Qualcomm was innocent, not because the exclusivity payments were fiction, because investigators broke their own procedural rules. The court found, quote, multiple failures to observe due process during the investigation, end quote. It also ruled that the Commission's analysis of anti-competitive effects was, quote, vitiated by a lack of consistency in the evidence relied on, end quote. 7 years of work, nearly €1 billion, gone because of 7 undisclosed meetings and an inconsistent economic analysis. The Commission chose not to appeal, and the EU was ordered to pay Qualcomm €785,857 in legal costs, the enforcer writing a check to the defendant. The predatory pricing fine had a different ending. In September 2024, the General Court upheld that decision, reducing the amount slightly to €238.7 million. Selling below cost to crush a startup was confirmed as illegal. Qualcomm has appealed to the Court of Justice. No final ruling exists yet. But nothing structural changed. Qualcomm still dominates the baseband chip market. They lead in 5G, they lead in mobile AI. No remedy was ever imposed to open the market. Icera is gone permanently. Intel sold its entire modem division to Apple in 2019 for $1 billion, years after being locked out of the iPhone by the very deal the Commission tried to punish. Apple, who received billions from Qualcomm in exclusivity payments, later sued Qualcomm in 2017 for $1 billion over licensing fees. Then settled in 2019 when Apple needed Qualcomm's 5G chips because Intel's modems couldn't keep up. The beneficiary became the litigant, became the customer. Again. The Commission's draft guidelines on exclusionary abuses, published in August 2024, now require detailed effects-based analysis rather than presuming exclusivity is automatically illegal. Stricter procedural rules require disclosure of all third-party meetings. The Qualcomm case helped write those rules. A company that paid billions to lock out competitors, then priced below cost to eliminate a startup, escaped its largest fine because investigators forgot to take notes. Stan Boland filed his complaint in 2009. 15 years later, the company he tried to protect doesn't exist, and the company he complained about still makes the chips in your phone. Next week, 5 banks named their illegal chat room the cartel. The European Commission noticed €1.07 billion worth of notices.